Hello everyone. So this discussion is about the urinary system. The urinary system filters blood. That's its most important function. As a waste product, after it has cleaned blood, it produces urine. As it does this function, it also helps regulate water, electrolyte, and acid-base balance of the body. Now here are the four structures of the urinary system. In cephalocaudal order, we have kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. The kidneys alone perform the functions just described previously. Siya yung nagpo-produce ng urine. The other organs of the urinary system, which are the paired ureters, the single urinary bladder, and the urethra, they provide temporary storage for urine, or they either serve as transportation channels to carry urine from kidneys to the outside of the body. So let us now discuss each of these structures. The kidneys are small organs. They are dark red, bean-shaped, and positioned in the dorsal part of the body, retroperitoneal, superior lumbar, T12 to L3 region. There are two kidneys, the right and the left. And since crowded by liver, the right kidney is slightly lower than the left. The renal hilum is its medial indentation, and atop each kidneys are endocrine glands, which are the adrenal glands. Now, the kidney has three protective layers. Deep to superficial, they are as follows. The fibrous capsule encloses kidney and gives it the glistening appearance. The perirenal fat capsule, it's a fatty mass which surrounds the kidneys and cushions against blow. The renal fascia is the outermost and holds the kidneys against the muscles of the trunk wall. There are three regions of the kidney when cut lengthwise. The three distinct regions become very apparent, and they are the renal cortex. In the photo, you see there the outer region in light color. The renal medulla in the middle, it's the dark red-brown area. You will see that they are usually triangles or pyramids in shape. And lastly, the renal pelvis, they are continuous with the ureters, and they are the ones in color yellow. The kidneys continuously cleanse the blood and adjust its composition, so it is not surprising that they have a very rich blood supply. Approximately 1/4 sa total blood supply ng body passes through the kidneys for 1 minute. Ito ang blood flow in and out of the kidney. It's the same, but this one just pertains to the blood flow again, and the ones in black, the aorta and the vena cava, are the direct connections from the heart. And then the ones in white are arteries and veins. So from aorta to arteries, these carries oxygenated blood going to the kidney. And lastly, the veins up to the vena cava are the ones which carries unoxygenated blood used by the kidney back to the heart. In the middle, we see again the black inks, the afferent arteriole, the glomerulus, the efferent arteriole, and the peritubular capillaries. In specific, they were color-coded as black because ito yung mismong loob ng kidneys, particularly the nephrons or the cells of the kidney. And talking about the nephrons, they are the structural and functional units of kidneys, and its most important function is the formation of urine. And as what we've said earlier, as it forms urine, ibig sabihin lang nun na filter na niya ang blood. There are two main structures of the nephrons. We have the glomerulus and the renal tubule. You see here a photo insert, an enlarged picture of a nephron. Nephrons inside kidneys are found only in the cortex and medulla. As you can see also in the photo, walang nephrons sa renal pelvis because in the renal pelvis, urine na lang ang nandyan. Now, the enlarged photo of a nephron is seen there, and you can see the knot which is labeled as glomerulus. So, yung maliit na wrinkled knot of capillary there is the glomerulus. On the other hand, the majority color yellow, the wrinkled part which is elongated, is the tubule, and that's the renal tubules. What now are the glomeruli or the glomerulus? As mentioned a while ago, it's a knot of capillaries and there is a high pressure in these cells. It acts as the blood filter. So again, in the photo, you will see, pansinin nyo yung glomerulus, yung nakalabel na glomerulus, siya yung color red na maliit sa gitna, and siya yung knot, yung parang may wrinkled. So please check the label. That glomerulus is actually a knot of capillaries. It's one capillary bed. So imagine niyo para siyang nag-act as a strainer. And you see on the left and the right side of the glomerulus are arterioles, the afferent and the efferent arterioles. The afferent arterioles feeds glomerulus. Ibig sabihin, diyan pumapasok ang blood. And then, the efferent arteriole receives blood that has passed through the glomerulus, meaning those blood that did not enter the strainer ng glomerulus. So imagine the glomerulus is a container having small holes in it made of cross wires for separating solid matter or big particles from a liquid. It's as if you were draining a pasta, no? And now, in blood, when you put now the blood into the strainer, pinasok mo siya sa afferent arteriole, i-filter siya ng glomerulus. Pero, big particles in the blood will not pass through the filter. At ano yung mga big particles ng blood? We have RBC, WBC, platelet, plus proteins in the plasma. Ibig sabihin, lahat yon dediretso ng efferent arteriole. So, ang nandiyan, RBC, WBC, platelet, and plasma. The glomerulus is the first capillary bed. Again, it's the red knot in the middle. While the afferent and the efferent arterioles are both continuous with peritubular capillaries. So, titignan nyo ngayon yung mahabang dire-diretso na color red. These are capillaries, the wrinkles in long red tubes, which will be further discussed later. What about the color blue? Ano yung lahat ng color blue na nakikita nyo sa photo? That is not the glomerulus, but the other part of the nephron, which are the renal tubules. Diyan naman, pumasok lahat ng na-filter. Again, sa glomerulus, yan yung filter. Siyempre, ang na-drain sa ilalim niyan, which is yung color blue. Doon na siya sa renal tubules. So, ano yung na-drain dyan? Plasma minus protein. Dahil ang hindi na-drain, na dumiretso ng efferent arteriole, again, yung RBC, WBC, platelet, and plasma protein. This is another photo showing the glomerulus. So again, afferent arteriole is where blood will enter. RBC, WBC, platelets, plasma. Yung glomerulus nag-act as a filter. Ang na-filter lang, yung bumaba, doon padiretso ng renal tubules is plasma minus protein. At yun yung tinatawag natin na filtrate. Paano ngayon yung hindi na filter, which are the big particles, RBC, WBC, platelet, and proteins in plasma, dumiretso siya ng efferent arterioles. A closer look at the glomerulus, we have the glomerular or the Bowman's capsule, close end of the renal tubule and surrounds glomerulus. Podocytes are the inner cell layers of capsule and they are highly modified octopus-like cells. They are very good in filtering. The peritubular capillaries, as mentioned a while ago, yun yung karugtong ng efferent arterioles. It's another capillary bed. Ibig sabihin, sino ang mga nandiyan sa peritubular capillaries? Yung components ng blood na hindi na-filter sa glomerulus. Kung sa afferent arteriole, high pressure, sa efferent arteriole, low pressure vessels ito. Kung ang glomerulus, very specific when filtering. Ang peritubular capillaries naman, very specific for absorption and secretion, which will be further discussed later on. Next part of the nephrons are the renal tubules. So, ito yung color blue ulit. Again, yung not sa gitna na color red, yan yung glomerulus. Yan mismo ang nagfi-filter. Yung afferent, pumapasok dyan yung dugo. Yung efferent, yung dugo na hindi na-filter. And then, lahat ng color red, yung mga wrinkles na dire-diretsong mahaba dyan, yan ang mga peritubular capillaries, which are specific for absorption and secretion. Yung mga color blue is the other part of the nephrons. Yung color blue, yan ang renal tubules. The first wrinkled part, yung pinakamalapit sa glomerulus is the proximal convoluted tubule. Yun namang loop sa ilalim is the loop of Henle. Next, yung second na wrinkled part is the distal convoluted tubule. And lastly, palabas ng renal pelvis is the collecting duct. So itong apat na to, ito yung sequence ng renal tubules. This makes up the rest of the nephron and approximately 3 centimeters siya in length. Again, nephrons are only found in the cortex and medulla. Cortical nephrons or the juxtamedullary nephrons, but no nephrons are found in the renal pelvis. How is urine formed? If it's the major function of the kidneys, because it filters urine, that's the first important step. But the next steps are also important when we talk about maintaining the composition of blood. So here in the photo, we see again the nephrons. So glomerulus, yan ang nagfi-filter. Afferent arteriole, pumasok yung blood. And then, nung na-filter siya ng glomerulus, saan dediretso yung na-filter? Sa renal tubule. Ano yung unang-unang part ng renal tubule? Proximal convoluted tubule, and then loop of Henle, and then distal convoluted tubule, and then collecting duct. So, ang nandiyan sa proximal convoluted tubule ay yung filtrate, which is plasma minus protein. Dahil yun lang ang nakapass through ng glomeruli. Yung blood components na hindi na-filter ng nephron, didiretso ng efferent arteriole, which is RBC, WBC, platelet, and plasma protein. Dire-diretso yon ng peritubular capillary, as shown in the photo. Now, kung filtrate yung pumasok sa proximal convoluted tubule, Diretso ng loop of Henle, diretso ng distal convoluted tubule, diretso ng collecting duct, tapos renal pelvis na yon for excretion. Hindi naman filtrate ang urine natin. Filtrate contains plasma minus protein. So if you think about it, recalling the composition of blood, plasma contains more than 100 substances. Ibig sabihin, meron siyang hormones, meron siyang nutrients, meron siyang water. So, hindi yan pwedeng sumama sa ihi because those are needed by the cells. So, dyan pa lang sa proximal convoluted tubule, yung filtrate ma-reabsorb. You see the photo, merong arrow from the first part of the renal tubule, which is yung proximal, may tubular reabsorption na. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng necessary substances kailangan bumalik ng peritubular capillary. The capillary now, it's a part of the blood vessel. Dire-diretso ngayon yan, pabalik ng circulation. Pero, naibalik na lahat ng dapat bumalik through reabsorption. Paano naman yung mga nandyan na kailangang isecrete as a waste product? Because remember, may part ng dugo na hindi pa rin na-filter. Therefore, merong tubular secretion, which means lahat ngayon ng kailangan pang itapon na nasa capillary ay ibabalik naman doon sa tubule. But this time, doon na sa bandang part ng distal convoluted tubule. Therefore, reabsorption and secretion are specific functions ng peritubular capillary. While si glomerular filtration, specific function yan ng glomerulus. And reabsorption secretions are just actions done in reverse. Ibinabalik sa circulation yung hindi dapat itapon sa reabsorption at itinatapon naman sa urine yung nandoon sa circulation papunta ng renal tubules via tubular secretion. That's why pagdating ng collecting duct, lahat na lang yan ay waste products, which now is produced as the urine. So, checking each of these steps, yan yung tatlong specific sequence sa pag-produce ng urine, which means na filter natin ang blood. So, in glomerular filtration, non-selective siya. It's a passive process. It's as if you are draining the blood. Pero ang nagpa-pass through lang dun sa strainer natin is filtrate, which is plasma minus protein. But then again, filtrate is not yet urine, kaya kailangang ma-reabsorb yung iba pabalik ng circulation. Pero yung nasa circulation na hindi lahat na filter, kailangang isecrete naman through the next step, which is tubular secretion naman. In 24 hours, the kidneys approximately filter 150 to 180 liters of blood plasma. The second step is reabsorption. So, ibinabalik mo sa system yung mga importanteng laman ng filtrate. Water, glucose, amino acids, ions, to name a few. Therefore, dapat ibalik siya through absorption. This begins as soon as filtrate enters the proximal convoluted tubule, which is the first part of the renal tubule. Ito naman, may passive absorption by osmosis, yan yung water. Pero active absorption, kailangan ng enzymes para ma-reabsorb yung mga glucose and amino acids. Ano ngayon ang hindi nare-reabsorb? Ito yung mga nitrogenous waste products, and these are normal substances found in urine. Urea, formed by liver as end product ng protein breakdown. Uric acid, metabolism, no? especially when nucleic acids are used, and creatinine metabolism in muscle tissue. That's why meron tayong chine-check na isang blood test, no? BUN CREA. Yung BUN CREA na yon, it's a usual blood test na ginagawa, no, sa laboratory to check how well the kidneys filter blood. BUN stands for blood urea nitrogen, and then CREA, creatinine. Next, the last step of urine formation is tubular secretion. Kabaliktaran lang siya ng reabsorption kasi yung mga nandun sa capillary, bago siya ibalik sa system, kailangan maitapon siya sa urine. Hydrogen, potassium, creatinine, and some of the waste products when we take in drugs. They are removed from the peritubular blood and secreted now into the filtrate hanggang sa maging urine na siya. And all now are waste products. Urine contains nitrogenous wastes and all the unneeded substances. In 24 hours, we usually produce 1 to 1.8 liters of urine. Normal urine output per hour is 30 to 60 ml per hour. Anong kulay ng urine? Clear, pale to deep yellow due to urochrome. Pigment ito after destruction of hemoglobin. Urine is sterile, slightly aromatic, and meron siyang ammonia odor. Acidic din ang pH ng urine, around 6, at ang specific gravity niya, 1.001 to 1.035. It's more dense than water kasi meron siyang mga solutes. And in the photo, you see the solutes, but 95% of urine is water. What is oliguria and anuria? This indicates low urine output. When we talk about oliguria, around 100 to 400 ml per day na lang, konti. Pero pag anuria, almost no urine at all, less than 100 ml per day is already considered anuria. Here are abnormal urine constituents or characteristics. Wala dapat glucose sa urine. If there is glycosuria. Baka you have excessive intake of sugar or diabetes mellitus. Ganon din ang proteins. Wala dapat protein sa urine, proteinuria. Kanina sabi natin, ang hindi na-filter is plasma minus protein. Because the plasma proteins are very big particles that cannot be filtered. Sometimes, if there is physical exertion or pregnant women, no, baka may proteinuria sila, but if there's really a disease condition, baka may glomerulonephritis or infection mismo ng glomeruli or inflammation and with hypertension. Wala dapat pus sa urine, WBCs and bacteria or pyuria, baka may UTI. Wala dapat dugo sa urine, hindi siya pula, hematuria, because RBCs cannot pass through glomeruli. If there is, baka may bleeding sa urinary tract. Hemoglobin, wala din, baka may hemoglobinuria. It could be because of transfusion reactions when there is blood transfusions or hemolytic anemia. And wala dapat bile pigment, no, bilirubinuria. Ito naman kapag may liver disease or hepatitis. The next structure are the two slender tubes, which are the ureters. It runs behind the peritoneum from the renal hilum to posterior aspect of bladder. Its most important function is passageway of urine. It carries urine from the kidney to the bladder. So mula dun sa renal pelvis, dire-diretso ng ureter, papasok ng bladder. It's a smooth muscle layer. Dun sa walls niya, the muscles contract to propel urine into the bladder. And again, that act is called peristalsis. Ano ang renal calculi? Renal calculi are crystals in the renal pelvis. Sometimes, tinatawag siyang kidney stones. When urine becomes extremely concentrated, yung solutes, such as uric acid salts, nagpo-form ng crystals at nagpe-precipitate yon sa renal pelvis. These crystals are called renal calculi or kidney stones. Minsan, nasa kidney pa lang siya. And in those cases, of course, kailangan siyang tanggalin. Pwedeng mga gamot na magtutunaw, maaaring surgery, may invasive or merong mga laser surgeries depending on the location. But if it has already reached the ureter, sometimes kailangan talaga ng emergency consideration because when the ureter is blocked, definitely hindi makakababa yung urine from the kidney to the bladder. So magkakaroon ng pain and other inflammation. May ipon din ang urine sa kidney kapag na-block siya, which can cause hydronephrosis. Next is urinary bladder. The bladder is a smooth, collapsible muscular sac which stores urine temporarily. It's retroperitoneal sa pelvis, just posterior to the symphysis pubis. Now, dahil nasa symphysis pubis lang siya, sa babae, diyan nakatago yung uterus, and when the uterus enlarges in pregnancy, naiipit niya ngayon yung bladder. That's why pregnant women, kapag nag-uumpisa ng lumaki ang uterus nila, nagkakaroon sila ng urinary frequency. There are 3 openings, 2 ureter openings and a single opening sa urethra. Sa lalaki, the prostate gland surrounds the neck of the bladder and then empties into the urethra. That's why sa lalaki, when they grow old, sometimes normally the prostate gland enlarges. Or if there are conditions such as benign prostatic hyperplasia or prostate cancer, na lumalaki ang prostate gland, usually ang first manifestation sa lalaki are problems of urination. When moderately full, it reaches 5 inches long, can hold 5 ml of urine, but capable of holding more than twice that amount. Pero ihing-ihi ka na nun, no? Nakokontrol mo lang siya. Now, hindi naman kailangang mapuno ang bladder para maramdaman natin ang urge to urinate. Usually, once 200 ml is collected pa lang, stretching of bladder wall activates micturition or voiding. Micturition or voiding is the act of urinating. And lastly, the urethra. It's a thin-walled tube that carries urine by peristalsis from bladder to outside of the body. Just like the large intestine, yung opening niya to the external has 2 sphincters. So sphincters are like valves. They open and close. Internal urethral sphincter is involuntary. External urethral sphincter is voluntary. In women and men, there are differences in urethral opening. Sa women, it's a 1/2 inch long external orifice lies anteriorly to the vaginal opening, while in men it's longer, 8 inches long and opens at the tip of the penis. UTI is now infection of the urinary tract. If it is specific on the urethra, we may call it urethritis. If it's specific in the ureter, urethritis. If it is specific in the bladder, it's cystitis. And yung pinakadelikado syempre, pag kidney yung involved, nephritis, pyelonephritis. Kung glomeruli pa nga, minsan glomerulonephritis. Now, As mentioned kanina, mas common ang UTI sa females because of the shorter urethra. And also yung location ng urethra ng females in relation to the anal opening. Maaaring magkaroon ng contamination such as fecal matter. Kaya importante ang hygiene, especially not wiping from back to front. Symptoms of UTI include dysuria or difficulty urinating, urinary urgency and frequency, fever, sometimes merong cloudy or blood-tinged urine. And kapag involved pati kidneys, mas severe ang symptoms. Maaring magkaroon pa ng back pain kasi nga retroperitoneal, or sometimes there's also severe headache. What now is urinary incontinence and urinary retention? Pag sinabing urinary incontinence, it occurs when a person is unable to voluntarily control the external sphincter. Common ang incontinence sa mga bata, 2 years and below, kasi wala pa sila nung control. No? Hindi pa sila nababladder training or nato-toilet training. But beyond 2 years old, dapat nato-toilet train na ang bata. Nagsasabi na sila if they wanna pee, no, or even poo. Sometimes, urinary incontinence also may occur kapag may mga emotional problems ang isang tao. Or baka nape-pressure ang bladder just like in pregnancy. Or kung may mga nervous system problems, like for example in stroke or spinal cord injury, because remember, the nervous system controls the action of the bladder. The other one is urinary retention. This happens when the bladder is unable to expel its contained urine. Usually, maaaring mangyari ito after anesthesia because it takes time for the muscles to regain activity, or minsan naman, no, pag nagkaroon ng enlargement ng prostate, as mentioned kanina, kapag merong benign prostatic hyperplasia or if there is a prostate cancer. Here are the additional functions of the urinary system. First is it maintains water balance. If you are a healthy young adult, water accounts for half or more of our body weight. Sa babae, 50% in women, at sa lalaki, almost 60% in men. No? And remember, may iba-ibang lalagyan ang tubig sa ating katawan. We have water in the ICF or intracellular fluid, at may water din sa ECF or extracellular fluid. Sa ECF, it's either the water is in the interstitial or intravascular, which means kung interstitial, these are the waters in the tissues. Yung intravascular naman, water sa loob ng blood vessels. Now, let's also take into consideration that drinking water is important to maintain water balance. And the hypothalamus acts as the thirst center. Pero as we filter blood, nagpo-produce ng urine, which is 95% water. Take note also that ADH, antidiuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary gland, prevents excessive water loss in the urine. Second function of the urinary system is it maintains electrolyte balance. Again, here, please consider the action of aldosterone. Isa siyang mineralocorticoid, hormone from the adrenal cortex. Aldosterone acts on kidneys and major factor regulating sodium ion content on the ECF. And in the process, it helps regulate concentration of other ions such as potassium, chlorine, magnesium, and others. No? Here is a little rule to keep in mind. Water follows salt. No? Major ion sa ICF is potassium and major ion sa ECF is sodium. And lastly, urinary system also maintains acid and base balance. Blood pH is normally 7.35 to 7.45. When we say blood pH, that's the power of hydrogen. Acidosis, if below 7.35. Alkalosis is if above 7.45. Bukod sa kidneys, isa sa nagre-regulate pa ng blood pH are the blood buffers and the respiratory system. But in this renal mechanism, the kidneys undertake regulation of blood pH because as blood pH rises, yung bicarbonate ions or the HCO3, they are excreted and hydrogen are retained by the renal tubule. Conversely naman, when blood pH falls, bicarbonate or HCO3 is reabsorbed and generated while hydrogen is secreted. Urine pH varies, no? Sabi ko nga kanina, acidic siya, 6 or from a range of 4.5 to 8. This reflects the ability of the renal tubules to excrete basic or acid ions para ma-maintain ang blood pH homeostasis. That's the end of the urinary system. Thank you.